Welcome to the Transform Sales Podcast, where forward-thinking business leaders come to share their experiences and ideas, learn from each other, and amplify their results together.
All right, guys, welcome to another session of the Transform Sales Podcast, Sales Software Review. I'm your host today, David Majura, and today we have a special guest, which is Rory Baker from Allegrow, co-founder of the company. Thank you for being here.
Thanks very much for having me.
Awesome. Well, guys, those that are watching, we're going to speak today on how revenue leaders can avoid landing in spam folders. So it's going to be an interesting topic today for those that are watching. But I do want to start with one question, apart from the questions that I want to share with you today, is what was the reason behind creating this company? Was there a challenge you were experiencing yourself and you wanted to solve that? Or you randomly thought about it and you figured it would be something that will help tons of people?
Yeah, sure. So back in 2018, I built a marketing automation application and we scaled that up a little bit, started to have bigger customers, and time again, every customer would have the same complaint for this marketing automation app. They would say, hey, we're getting results out of it, but I keep hearing complaints that emails are landing in spam folders. And we thought to ourselves, hey, this is such a big problem. Every single email sending platform has this issue. Let's build a small part of the product that starts to fix that, and it can be a real differentiator for us. Then something kind of weird happened. Every time we would demo the platform to a bigger customer or someone we thought was like, oh, we're so excited about having this customer, they would say, hey, I'm way more interested in what you're doing with stopping emails landing in spam folders than I am, the general marketing automation side of things. So we made the decision at that point to just completely pivot the company at early 2021 to just focus on making sure that emails land in the primary inbox, not the spam folder. So that's a bit about the story and how we got here. We didn't just dream up one day that, we should stop emails landing in spam folders. It came from kind of that real challenge that we saw a lot of clients have, and we pivoted into doing it.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's something I also deal with. And I've been in this role for the past 6 years, and that's something up to this day we still struggle with, right? So
it's a big challenge. It's only getting harder as well. We've seen the Google Sender guidelines come out just the beginning of this year. We've just seen the update on how Google's treating images from certain domains. It's flagging them for spam all the time. So it's kind of this ever-changing landscape that only seems to get more difficult, to achieve inbox placement in as more people send emails over time and our inboxes get more busy.
Got it. So I have a silly question because I see that on LinkedIn a lot. So you're the type of person that recommend like a plain email with no links, permission-based, or do you think it'll be good to add like a link after the second touch? How does that kind of work for you guys based on best practice?
Different use cases, you can do different things, right? If you're a double opt-in list, it's completely fine to send links in an email. If you're using a third-party SMTP, it's purely opt-in. You're using something like MailChimp or HubSpot to deliver that message. Those transactional email servers are unlikely to have many issues because providers are really good at knowing, hey, this is a transactional-based email. This is fully opt-in versus something that's outbound. Now, when you get into outbound, which is what I expect most people are focused on listening today, it's definitely what we're focused on at Allegrow. You're picking people you feel are a very, very good target for you. You feel like it's the right time to reach out to them, and you feel like you have a compelling message. Now, you're just going to send that email because you have a legitimate interest to do so. That's higher risk, it's higher stakes, and the filtering is likely to be much more aggressive on those messages. So as a general rule of thumb, we would say in your initial emails, a max of 2 links, including the footer. And I wouldn't recommend your call to action being a book a demo link. I would ask an engaging question, and that would be only 1 question per email as the general best practice.
Got it. And it will be an open-ended question, right?
Yeah, exactly. An open-ended question, something that's easy to answer, doesn't ask something too intrusive at the very beginning stage. You're likely asking whether what you do and the value you think you can provide is, a priority right now or something of that nature.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry for going a little away from the questions from the podcast, but it's a topic that everybody keeps talking about, like cold call is dead. And this one has been a main topic I've seen a lot. So I just want to make sure I got the right expert in front of me and that's the right question, right?
Yes, no, we can get more into the details for sure on that kind of thing. It is always a question of testing what works best for your individual value proposition. And I've seen things work for some customers that don't work for others. So you have to be willing to experiment a bit, I think, with email in a controlled environment to get it right.
I agree. And most of the time we tested both, right? But we don't know which one is best because sometimes the numbers kind of differentiate, right? Sometimes you're testing in an audience of 10,000, then you testing in an audience of 1,000. So it's very hard to really say this one works better than the other one. So absolutely. So of course, today we're going to focus on how revenue operation leaders can avoid landing in spam folders. So based on this use case, what alternatives were your customers more often using before buying your software?
There's rarely a alternative. It's usually a question of we felt just the sending platform and our existing content, our existing idea of what our buyer would be interested in hearing about was good enough. That's usually the main thing people have been doing before they come onto Allegrow. And they think, that's all going fine. But then one day, they have a rep call someone up to follow up on a DocuSign that was meant to be complete. And the person says, hey, your follow-up email actually landed in my spam folder. I didn't realize that was sent when it was because I never got your follow-up message. Or they're reaching out to a customer about their renewal. And the customer says, hey, your messages landed in spam. I'm not sure why that's happening. And that's usually a line in the sand for the revenue decision maker to say, hey, we knew there was some issues with our outbound email. It's starting to impact the messages we send to people who know us, who should be responding to us, and really critical parts of the business. We have to make a concerted effort and investment in having a specific solution that just focuses on monitoring that issue and addressing it whenever there's issues that start to appear. So usually the biggest thing we're replacing is people just believing the built-in deliverability tools that they have, the small number of them, inside their sending platform was good enough to solve the issue.
Got it. So most of the time they're trying to solve it on their own, not seeking for experts. And then they realize, like, for example, we lost a client. Now we got to go heavy on outbound. And then the targeted list that we have just got damaged because we didn't take that into account. Now I got to look for somebody. Yeah.
It's usually someone who, they did well. Usually we're working with really successful teams. So they have, great outcomes every day when it comes to, their sales process. But usually there's a triggering event where they realize this has actually become a significant problem for us. We want to get to the bottom of it and we want to make sure it can't happen again.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that. So when it comes to the challenges that your customers are running into, how does your software provide an alternative solution for them to overcome that pain?
So there's really three core parts to the Allegrow platform. The first thing is we give you a source of truth on sender reputation and spam rates. That means you have a credit score for email. You know exactly how often your emails are landing in spam folders and being automatically filtered there on average. We don't just give you one, data source on that. We tell you this is how one rep compares to another rep. This is how one variation of content compares to another. And this is how every domain you have that's operational at your company actually ranks in terms of sender reputation.
Got it. So it's not just validating the score one time, but it's keeping it real time to make sure that everybody's fully aware of what could happen, and then sharing best practice for those SDRs that might be misusing the tool, right?
Exactly. And that means you can get on top of issues as they start, but also identify them and fix them quickly. So the second part of the platform is really starting to fix the existing problem. We make sure you have every single best practice and technical setup in place for deliverability so you can send outbound emails safely. That might be even throttling your email messages that you put through the sales engagement platform. It's friendly traffic from other accounts in the Allegrow network to help improve the sender reputation over time. And it's making sure that authentication is always working correctly and functioning well. And then the third and final part of the platform is something that bigger teams are super interested in. And I think it's even relevant to fast growing startups now as well, is telling you of all these contacts that you have that you can potentially reach out to, they're all real contacts. Which are the ones that are most risky to cold email versus safest to cold email? So we'll tell you, hey, you're going to prospect Cisco. This person inside Cisco is really hard to hit over cold email. In fact, when people do, they often get spam blocked. Whereas their direct report or someone above them in the org chart is completely safe to outbound email. So we're actually telling teams this is the channel you should use to prospect this specific person so that you don't keep landing into spam traps in the future.
Got it. Got it. I do have a question when it comes to, for example, I seen this in Apollo, which is the confidence level, right? Do you guys also give that kind of view of, this person might be at 80%, 70%? Uh,
They're a great example because Apollo.io, they're actually a customer of Allegrow. So, and we do two quite different things. We're complementary, not competitive. Apollo's very interested in saying, to what degree are we sure this contact is correct, right? Are they actually a real email account? We're more interested in saying, to what degree is this contact safe to cold email versus risky to cold email? And they're two quite different things. So, you know how Apollo does the likely to engage segment? It's a small segment of contacts that are likely to, open and reply to emails based on historic data. Allegrow actually does the inverse of that, right? We do likely to disengage, likely to cause problems, likely to be dead emails. And that's the difference there. And we put them in definitive categories. So we don't give you a percentage score. We say, hey, these are the safe ones. These are the risky ones. And everything in between that, this is how you should treat that specific segment of contacts to get the most engagement out of them and decrease the spam risk.
I think that gives me a higher confidence level than just, what might be the difference between an 80% and 70%? I'm still at risk, right? Here's you're actually giving me the channels where I should reach these people to make the outreach successful, which is a lot more valuable in that sense, right?
Exactly, because it's all subjective, right? One rep might think 90% confidence isn't quite good enough for them. Another rep might think, oh my gosh, I'll take everything over 50% confidence level. We don't do that. What we say is, hey, this is a category called dead emails. With dead emails, you don't email them, you just call those people. Whereas safe emails, you put them into your standard sequence. We won't get in your way, email, call them, do everything to them. And then we'll even say these are spam blocking emails. So these ones, they're correct addresses, but they're much more likely to result in a spam block. So what you want to do there is you want to make sure you get engagement first and then do only semi-automated emails and a much, much lower number of them to get engagement out of that contact, that account. So yeah, it's more definitive than a percentage score.
Okay, I think that's better. It keeps the team a lot more safe, right? Because also SDR habits could be into play as well, right? Somebody like you said, right? They might consider 60% something that's worth the shot, but then they're hurting the rest of the team, right? So
yeah, if they're on the same domain, one rep that has a low reputation can bring down that domain. They can bring down the performance of the other reps. So yeah, it's really important. I think people want definitive advice. And I think being concise about it, giving them a single category, saying this is what you do with that category, that's the feedback we heard from customers of what they like the most. They don't like to know something's very risky versus marginally risky. They just want to know, what should I do with that contact to get the most engagement possible while running the sales process?
No, for sure. And one thing that I experienced as an SDR, for example, is spending so much time on building this list, trying to get the data complete. For example, nowadays people are using Clay. And so, that requires an extra cost. So like doing all this work and then not running through that validation, you're just losing so much time and effort. Now you have to have the team do another list, kind of expand their ICP just to get some sort of engagement. But then, there's no true north. Right?
Yeah, sales is inherently a job that's filled with rejection, right? And there's always some portion of time that gets wasted. I think if you ask any outbound sales team, they'll tell you, we know at least half of the prospecting we do is complete wasted time. We know at least half of these people are very unlikely to ever respond to us, engage with us. The problem is we just don't know which half. So we have to do it all anyway. What Allegrow is really focused on is telling you in advance, here's the portion that's least likely to engage, the ones that are going to waste your time, waste your resources. Here's the segment that you should be spending all your time on, the safe segment, the one that you're going to get the most engagement from.
No, this is awesome. Well, this is the favorite part of the podcast, which is you showing us real time. How does this look? So if you can share your screen and walk us through a live demo of the key software features that help those customers overcome the challenges we spoke about, that'll be great for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to go ahead and share here. Like we discussed, there's really three core parts to the platform. The first is getting a credit score for email. So I can see exactly where the domain reputation is each day for every domain that we use at Allegrow for go-to-market. And I can tell, hey, well, why does this domain have a much lower sender reputation? Why is that at 87 versus this one here, which is at 96? We shouldn't be routing our outbound email through that low reputation domain. But not just can I do it on a domain level, I can do it across every single rep inside the company. And I can see how they trend over time. So I can say, hey, if I notice when we load up here that Victoria has a 95% sender reputation, which is very good for an outbound rep. Whereas our bottom performer, Sophie, they have a 21% spam rate. Now, that's a significant difference. So what I can do as someone in sales enablement, as someone in sales operations, is I can see what is the difference between the sequences that they're running. We need to make the sequences of Sophie much more similar to Victoria to get a sustainable sales process running and stop this other rep from bringing down the overall domain average, right? So that's a bit about diagnosis and seeing where your emails land. What we'll also do is have friendly email traffic each day. So we can send emails from your mailbox to another real corporate server, make sure that it lands safely as a test email, and then have friendly traffic go back and forward to help raise the sender reputation of each rep inside your company over time, so they stop running into those issues. Now, I think one of the biggest issues is when companies get to the stage where they have a safe domain sender reputation, they have a high rating. When they're doing outbound, how do they keep it there? Because they're always reaching out to new contacts, and that can always hurt you, essentially. So what we have inside Allegrow is something called the safety net. And this can sit right inside your sales engagement platform. So reps don't need to log into it. It sits right inside SalesLoft or Outreach.io and will run risk analysis on every single contact that you schedule an email to or add to a sequence. And when we see a high-risk contact, so one that's going to hurt your sender reputation, we stop the email from leaving the vendor and we say, hey, what you should do instead is you should call this person, or you should take a different contact at the same account instead. And that'll be more successful for your team and stop them from running into issues. I'm going to show you a slightly different view here on the safety net everywhere that puts this actually in a pie chart to represent the data. And that way we can see a little more on kind of how that might segment out when you take your entire data list and run it through Allegrow.
Got it. And in the meantime, while this is loading, I have a question. So, for example, you run the data validation, right? In that moment, when it finds a contact that it's not worth sending a message, how does that how is that being communicated to the team? Is it like in Slack or in an email or within the same platform? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So you can actually set up automations essentially inside your sales engagement platform. So you can say, hey, we want, when we mark someone inside SalesLoft or Outreach, we'll update a custom field that'll say dead email, for example. And you can say, I automatically want all the dead emails to go ahead and be added to a calling only sequence instead. And that means that they get to basically not have to come in and manually do anything. It's just instantly inside a different sequence that keeps them prospecting and reaching out to the very best contacts.
Got it.
So what I think we have here, and we'll see how we're going, is I'm using, there we are. So we're inside the safety net here, and that essentially shows you an overview of this activity. So we can see a dead email coming into our team member, Anthony. It stops it from leaving the sales engagement platform, and then that can automatically be added to a sequence that'll still let him prospect this account, but without putting his sender reputation at risk. And that all gets reflected in here, but it's also logged inside your sales engagement platform.
Got it. So it sends it elsewhere to validate, and then it'll drop the notification, hey, it didn't send it, and it'll stop the cadence, right?
Yeah, so essentially, we'll just stop it for that one contact in some running, and it's risk analysis. So it's not necessarily just because the contact isn't correct, it's because we're saying, hey, this contact is likely to cause problems, and you'd be better to call them, or you would be better to just pick a different contact at the same account to keep your sender reputation as high as it can be.
Got it. Perfect. That makes sense.
And I think that gives a full overview of kind of the basics that we get into. Of course, with some companies, it's more about the content, and then we get into content testing. With others, it's about certain reps having spikes in sending, and then we get into throttling. But for today, on a high level, I think that gives a really good overview.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you, what are the tasks, deliverables, and or people that needs to be involved in setting up this software for this use case? And how long does it typically take to reach full productivity?
For implementations, it's open authentication. So people can connect in seconds to the platform. So it's super fast. The people involved are usually whoever's heading up your sales development team. Sometimes marketing, if they have a use case, if they have big data lists that they need to run through Allegrow, it's going to be whoever owns those data lists and that process. But primarily, you also need buy-in from the people who are conducting the outreach, which is the sales development representatives or the business development representatives, depending on what you call them. But the sellers that are going to market outbound, they're the users of the platform. And then someone in sales ops or rev ops is likely the admin on the platform. Timeline to get it set up is usually around a week across a team of about 25 people. When we start getting into the hundreds, then it's usually a week or two to get them all set up. So pretty fast as far as SaaS applications go.
Awesome. And when it comes to KPIs for a RevOps leader, what are the KPIs that need to evaluate the success with your software?
So I think people fall into different categories of how they think about a successful outcome on Allegrow. One of the core ones is the engagement that you're getting from emails. So how many new sales qualified leads are we generating over email? How many replies are we getting? How many bounces are we seeing driving that number down, driving those spam blocks down? Those are all core email KPIs. And people would expect those to go up on Allegrow and see that they're more consistent, they're more hittable, and they're getting their numbers as a team. But there's other ones where people are essentially, onboarding to Allegrow and they know they just want to stop seeing those critical issues with spam filtering. So as long as AEs no longer have their follow-up emails landing in spam folders, they'll be perfectly happy. As long as customer success stops seeing emails being filtered into spam when they're trying to get renewals done or upsells done, they'll be happy. And it just depends on what level of issue you had before you implemented a lot of the time there. And then I think there's certain teams that you can go higher level. Like one of our customers called Warmly, they saw all their reps at 80 to 120% quota attainment after implementing Allegrow. And they just believe that we're a core part of that tech stack and a core part of enablement for them having reps ramped quickly and hitting quota. Because if you get someone new started and they can't get in conversations quickly, they can't scale their outreach approach to the levels they would need to because they're landing in spam, then that's a huge issue for enablement, for onboarding, and the success of the sales reps. So people look at it different ways. We like to zero in on the KPIs of the email engagement rates, the bounce rate, the reply rate, and the lead number. But other teams look at things that are a bit more high level sometimes.
Got it. And it's also good to mention the sender reputation score, right? For example, in our case, right, if I'm there for a week, now I'm seeing that the reputation is going up, that's gonna, quick value is what usually helps retention, right? Like I feel like I'm getting value right off the rip, then
yeah, for sure. No. And I see that with the safety net all the time, because the way people look at that is, if we were going to prospect this contact and it was an unsafe contact, it wasn't going to provide a positive response. We're wasting our reps' time. So if we plug in and we're stopping, sometimes, with one of our bigger customers, they've been implemented for 9 months and we're sitting right inside SalesLoft and we've stopped them from prospecting 65,000 contacts that would have been hugely risky. So we didn't just take those away. They replaced those touch points with ones that were going to provide more value. And they see that as a really quick win. And then, of course, like I said, the reputation going up and the spam rate coming down is really a critical KPI you'll see inside Allegrow if you get implemented.
Awesome. No, I appreciate your time for this. And I feel like this is something that would definitely help a lot of people that are spending so much time trying to get the right list, try to nail down their ICP and trying, omni-channel approaches, right? Because sometimes there's a lot of teams that I've seen that rely heavily on just email. But then sometimes, if I have a platform that tells me, hey, LinkedIn might be the right way to go, a call might be the right way to go, you're still not losing on the opportunity, right? You still could get the message across. So
yeah,
I feel like this is a tool that's definitely needed for a lot of teams, especially in the marketplace. And those that are definitely suffering from those challenges that you mentioned previously, right? But I definitely appreciate your time for this. Any other thing before we go? I feel that you touched everything that I wanted to hear from this tool, and I'm pretty sure that those that are watching are also getting lots of benefits from this.
Well, thanks very much. No, I think we touched on a lot there. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, those that are watching, if you are looking for a tool that can help you avoid landing in spam folders, this will be definitely a good alternative tool to use. Those that are thinking that you're doing this on your own and it's trying to get near a solution, don't try it. Just go straight to Allegrow, and Rory will be definitely here to support you. Those that are definitely looking into this tool, I'll leave a link in the description, and we'll take it from there. Happy to help.
Thanks.